am here today as a concerned mother of two boys, both attending schools in Northeast ISD in San Antonio, Texas. On May 9th, 2016, Northeast ISD voted to implement Draw the Line, Respect the Line human sexuality curriculum in the middle schools. I have read the entire curriculum, including all 3 grades, teachers' manuals, and student workbooks. And I have compared their contents to the Texas Education Code, specifically 28.004-E, which mandates that 5 requirements must be met by any human sexuality curriculum taught in Texas public schools. The 5 mandates require that the curriculum must, 1, present abstinence from sexual activity as the preferred choice of behavior. 2, devote more attention to abstinence than to any other behavior. 3, emphasize that abstinence is the only method that is 100% effective in preventing pregnancy, disease, and related emotional trauma. Number 4, they must direct adolescents to a standard of behavior in which abstinence before marriage is the most effective way to prevent pregnancy and disease. And lastly, they must teach contraception and condom use in terms of human use reality rates instead of theoretical laboratory rates. Unfortunately, my analysis revealed that none of these 5 requirements are met by Draw the Line, Respect the Line curriculum. Your packet of information shows you my detailed analysis and factual examples. In addition to Northeast ISD, 6 other school districts in San Antonio have also recently adopted Draw the Line, Respect the Line, or are in process of doing so. Many other Texas cities have suffered the same fate as organizations align themselves with the school district's Student Health Advisory Council, also known as the SHAC, allowing them to influence the curriculums being evaluated and recommended by the SHAC and ultimately adopted by the trustees. In addition to my compliance concerns, the curriculum contains several other areas of concern to middle school parents. First, the lesson summaries and objectives provided by the publisher do not match the details of the teacher instruction or student workbooks. This is significant because my research shows that the members of the SHAC were provided with the summary level information to inform their recommendation to the Board of Trustees, and then the trustees were provided with an even higher level summary to inform their vote. Number 2, human anatomy and human reproductive cycle are not covered in the entirety of the curriculum, which is what most parents assume will be taught in human sexuality instruction. Number 3, parents are not mentioned as a resource or option to seek assistance or guidance in the entire program, and there are several activities where parents' authority is subverted. Number 4, teaching stories and games included in the curriculum are erotic and inappropriate and present sexual behaviors in a casual fashion. Therefore, we must hold Texas school districts accountable for selecting human sexuality curriculum that complies with the Texas Education Code, and we must have a swift avenue for parents and concerned community members to request enforcement of these laws when they see a violation.
Thank you for taking the time to look into your curriculum that closely. One question about the SHAC committee. Are parents on that committee?
They are. Well, I have learned about
Go ahead and turn that mic on again.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. It cuts itself off from time to time. You get to watch it.
Okay, yes, what I understand about our SHAC committee specifically is we have either 49 or 50 members,
Oh my gosh.
and 29 of them are parents. What I have learned in asking questions of the SHAC members and district employees is that we have 2 district employees that are effectively directing the SHAC agenda and what is being done, and the parents are truly just advisors. And so the employees are picking who's coming to speak. The employees are picking, all of the different items, and the parents are not driving it, which the intention of the SHAC in 28.004A at the very beginning states that the purpose of the SHAC is to make sure that our community values are represented in our school curriculum. And so the parents should be driving that, not school employees, in my opinion.
No,
but that is what's happening in our district.
That's the intent of the law. What did they use before they went to this particular?
Choosing the best is what we've had, I believe, for the last 3 or 4 years. I just moved to San Antonio 2.5 years ago. And at that time, I called before we selected our school district to make sure I understood what was being taught. I have not read the entire Choosing the Best, but people I know who have, it meets the Texas Education Code, in their opinion. And it's more recent, it's evidence-based. And when it was proposed to our trustees, they were told that choosing the best is not evidence-based. And so there was, in my opinion, some misinformation provided in the summary level information.
Are you familiar with the program called Worth the Wait?
I've heard of it, but I can't say that I know specifically about it. And so I'm sorry, I can't answer that.
Well, thank you for looking into this so closely.
Thank you.
Mr. Maynard, and then Mr. Mercer, and then Ms. Cargill.
Yeah, thanks for coming. I know that it's not an easy drive, and thank you for your passion. Just a couple curious. I'm just very curious. Is that before the school district adopted the program, was it made available to the public? Was there any kind of public hearing or public input by the Board of Trustees?
My understanding is there is not. We moved here to San Antonio in July of 2014, and it was about that time that I think that summer, that they started talking about their different choices as to changing to a different curriculum. And my understanding is that there was not any kind of public hearing. Matter of fact, as they got closer to their vote and people started to learn about different things that were going on, and they showed up to the shack, they weren't necessarily welcomed. And when there was the actual vote from the shack, I was not there, but I know a parent who was. There were 20 members approximately, I believe, that showed up to vote, and there were 30 parents there saying, please do not do this. They voted on whether or not to delay the decision. They said, no, we're going to move forward, and then it was passed on to the trustees. The one thing I do know with my research is that the publisher has summary level information like you would expect in all textbook curriculum. But if you compare the summary level information for a chapter to what's actually taught in the curriculum, it's not the same. So in the summary, it'll say, we're going to reinforce abstinence with XYZ. But in that chapter, the word abstinence or even not have sex won't even be mentioned. So it is misleading. And so our shack and our board received that summary level information, which is understandable, but the details did not match the summary level information, in my opinion.
And I'm just kind of curious too. Is that have you pursued any of this through your school district's grievance process?
Yes, I actually officially filed my grievance this week, but what I tried to do prior to that was I went to the board meeting on May 9th where it got adopted, because literally days before that I heard about what was going on. And after that, I read the entire curriculum. I made an appointment with our superintendent, and he brought 2 of his staff members who are involved in this process to help answer questions. And I outlined the majority of my concerns, specifically that I did not believe that it was in line with the Texas Education Code, and that was December 13th. And since then to now, I asked at that meeting, please prove me wrong. I would love to be wrong. Please show me your analysis that it does meet the Texas Education Code. I've yet to be provided that. I tried to call the organization that they stated had told them it was in line with the Texas Education Code. I could not find anyone at that organization who would make that statement, and so I emailed the employee and asked, can you please tell me who I should call so I can ask this question and we can put this to bed, and I'm yet to receive a result to that. And then on last week, Monday, I received a pretty interesting letter from a school district employee highly encouraging me to stop talking about what I was talking about. And so I used that letter as a basis to file agreements. And so I did do that on Wednesday. And so I have met with my board member representative as well. I also went to the school, Blossom Athletic Center, and made sure the curriculum that I had obtained was the same curriculum that Northeast ISD had obtained, to make sure I didn't have an old copy or something like that.
And I don't know, maybe this would be a question for staff. I don't know, our lawyers are not here, but just, Monica, maybe you could answer the question, even though that you're not a lawyer.
I was going to say, let's just remember that I'm not the lawyer.
Nor do you play one on television.
Every now and then, it kind of seems that way, though.
It seems like that. Yeah. So if a parent has or a stakeholder in the district has a concern, and where a district is doing something that at least appears to be in conflict with the education code, what is their recourse beyond just a local grievance? Is there a process beyond a local grievance?
So certainly if anyone has a concern, a complaint can be filed with the agency. I believe that there is information on the TEA website to follow that process. Just want to make sure that I'm clear that any complaints that come in will be looked at, and a decision will be made regarding whether the agency has any the commissioner has any jurisdiction over that, and so that would be. I can't guarantee what steps would or would not happen, but certainly a complaint could be filed, and investigators will look at that.
Mr. Mercer.
Good morning, Melissa. Just common questions I ask. Are you a registered lobbyist? No. Are you represent any group, any coalition, any? And the third question, I don't want to insult you, but. Okay, and don't be insulted by the last question, but are you an attorney? No.
That mic is off.
Well, I was asking because of the detail, you went side by side of what the code said. So my first question really, the section on human anatomy and reproductive cycle are not covered, but this is a human sexuality class.
Can you explain that?
Yeah,
that got my attention as well.
Yeah, mine too, because I expected to find that there. And when I talk to parents, that's what they think is in human sexuality instruction. This particular program is assuming that they already have it. And when I met with the superintendent and his two staff members, they did agree that that part of my analysis they would agree with, and that biology, as it relates to human anatomy, is taught in 7th and 8th grade science, and that what is taught there is adequate. I'm in the process of trying to understand that. I don't have a current opinion on that, but that is where they're intending that our children are going to receive it. So if a parent only wants that to be taught to their children, this program is not what they need. And that's not really being disclosed to the parents either, unless they think to ask that question.
And the scope of the program is the 6th, 7th, 8th grade, is that right, middle school?
We're talking 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So if you think about it, we're talking 12, 13, and 14-year-old children. And the way that Draw the Line, Respect the Line works is it basically says you choose whatever sexual behavior that you feel ready for. And that's actually language from the curriculum. So you as a 13-year-old, 7th grade girl or boy, I apologize, any children in here.
Yeah, let's not do that because it's being,
Well, and it's so you can imagine it's everything from.
Just say it however nicely you can say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say anything terrible, but the language actually in the curriculum is really bad. The actual details, the things that are said about sexual behaviors, it's not medically factual. It's bad. And in your packets, towards the back, I gave you the parent packet that I've been passing out. It's your first set of papers. Gives you my information that I said today, the law for 28.004, my flyer to my presentation on my Facebook page, and then everything else in there is the parent packet that goes along with the presentation. And in there, I've given you examples of 3 stories that are used in 7th and 8th grade. And you can draw your own opinion about what you think about the language. I've also shown you examples out of the material where I've said that the parents' rights are being subverted and the parents aren't being used as a resource. I've showed you specifically how that's listed. I've also shown you how for each part of the code it's in violation. So it's supposed to say that it's the preferred behavior, which means it needs to say it's better, it's the best, and that needs to be the consistent message. The consistent message is you can have sex or not have sex. You decide, whatever you feel ready for. And if you have sex, make sure you use a condom. Or, they're supposed to talk about, for school-age children, abstinence until marriage. That's not talked about at all. I was even told by a school district employee that the previous program focused too much on marriage, and they wanted to get rid of that. So and then the last component of the code where it talks about human use rates and laboratory rates, I apologize, I don't have a sample for you there. The district is replacing the condom lesson, which is really bad, with a little less offensive, in my opinion, condom lesson. But when I viewed that, I had to take written notes. I couldn't take pictures of their lesson. And so the actual language says that condoms are 98% effective, which is a laboratory rate, not a human use rate. So that's an outright violation to have that number in there at all. And then it goes on to say, but in the first year of use, 18 out of 100 couples will become pregnant. But that's because they don't know how to use the condom or they choose not to. And so that's misleading, in my opinion, to the children. If you just know how to use it, you'll get 98% effectiveness. Yet we know as adults we can't achieve that.
just have two more questions, and one of, well, actually, a third question. You said that the lesson summaries are not the ones that are in the class. I don't understand it. How do you know that? What's in the
What's in the details?
the summary objectives by the publisher are not the same as what's taught in the classroom? How do you know that? It's
Well, so the teacher instruction for what is taught for that lesson. For some lessons, it's 10 pages. For some lessons, it's 30 pages of instructions on what they're supposed to talk about in the classroom, the games and activities they encourage that they play. And so I looked at that information. And so if I said classroom, that was wrong. It should be what's in the curriculum details. So the curriculum details, for example, in grade 8, lesson 2, in that situation, they say that one of their 4 objectives is to talk about abstinence and the benefits of abstinence. So that sounds really good. So if you're just looking at the summary level information, you'd go, okay, that's great, and it probably meets the code. But when you look at the details of the curriculum, in that particular lesson, the activity is to play a game. It's kind of like Jeopardy, and there are 35 questions in 4 categories. The categories are not, abstinence is not one of the 4 categories. Only 3 of the questions even mention abstinence. One of them asks specifically about the benefits of abstinence. The other 2 mention abstinence or not have sex in one of the possible answers. So you can imagine in less than 40 minutes of a classroom, you might not get through all 35 questions. So that's a chance that those 3 questions aren't even talked about. So to state that it's the objective, but it's the kind of proof's not in the pudding. And it's lesson after lesson after lesson is like that.
and the 2 questions I have. One's about funding and grievance, and maybe Madam Chair, we do a health book? We don't do human sex education
That's
book.
SHAC. The
That's
SHAC
just
committee
SHAC
does
only?
that.
Do we fund that,
We
though?
do
Is there-
the standards.
But the funding comes to us for that. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I guess the question was, how is this funded? Where'd the money come from for this?
Yeah, it's possible that one of the other ladies that is here today might have a more detailed answer. I do
Okay.
have a parent friend that has done a lot of research there, and my understanding is that at least the majority of the grants are actually coming from federal funds that they're using to pay for these. And if you remember, Texas has a very high standard for abstinence education. The rest of the country, including federal, does not. And so just by mentioning the word abstinence, they can be in compliance with what the rest of the country says. And so my understanding would be if we are just using funds from the federal government doesn't require all of the A through H components that Texas does when Texas funds. But I'm not the expert on that, but that is what I've been told.
But there will be someone here I can ask about funding.
I think there is someone who could answer that
Because
better.
I'm interested in district money, if it's from the federal government. And the last thing, the grievance process, I know Attorney Vaughn is back. The grievance process, I know in most cases you go to your principal, or you go to your school district, and you come to the state board. Is that what happened here, Vaughn, or did they go online and go right to the...
Put your mic.
I'm asking about the grievance process. What normally is you go to your principal, you go to your school district board, and you go to the state board, whatever. But I'm not sure if we have is this something that goes to the commissioner? Who has jurisdiction, the State Board of Education or the commissioner? To say whether or not it violates the education code.
So it somewhat depends on the type of questions, and when you're talking about grievance process, I think you're potentially mixing two different grievance processes. One is all districts are required to adopt a grievance process, so they will have a locally adopted grievance process for which the members of the community can go before the local board with issues that they have. From that, some of those issues can be then raised through appeal. Those decisions can be raised through appeal up to the commissioner. The agency itself has a grievance process where folks can file complaints about violations of law, at which point we would do a jurisdictional review to determine whether that is something within our regulatory authority or not. Under the education code, statute specifically prohibits this board or the commissioner from substituting their judgment for that of a local school district, as long as it's not a clear-cut violation of the law. So
Prohibits the board from what? From giving a judgment?
from as long as someone is acting within the law from substituting your judgment for that of the local district. If you give me a sec, I'll pull up the exact language.